All right, kia ora, everyone. Welcome to Nathan's Dataverse MCP Security Extravaganza. We are going to do a bit of I hesitate to call it a deep dive, but we're going to geek out a little bit on the security around Dataverse and Model Context Protocol. So, the perception at the moment is that this is kind of the Wild West. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you into some of the cool things that Copilot Studio does around security. So we'll answer, is this really the Wild West? So specifically what we're going to go through this evening is I'm going to show you firstly just Dataverse MCP without any security considerations at all. So basically me as a system administrator, what I can do. And then we'll start to look at a user who has some specific security roles. So not that system administrator level, but kind of a user who may or may not have privileges on a table. And then we'll throw a curveball at it. So what if we have clashing privileges? What if the user doesn't have privileges, but we've set up our connection with higher privileges with a maker, someone with sysadmin, something like that. All right. Let's go ahead and get into the demo. So the first thing we're going to go through is just your normal user. So I've got this the higher privilege, someone with permission to everything, the keys to the kingdom. That's me as the maker in my own environment. I'm a sysadmin. And so I've got this very, very simple agent I've created. Very simple set of instructions. Use Dataverse MCP to do whatever the user asks. All right, so let's, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to count the number of test tables. So I've got a custom table called Nathan Test Tables. Let's ask it to count that. So I'm going to pop my prompt in here. Now I am in an early access environment. One thing I've noticed is that I've had to start using the logical name for the table. I'm not quite sure why, but again, this is a fast moving space. So we'll trigger MCP and it's going to go through. It's going to start counting. And you can see it's come back with 2 rows, which indeed we have. Cool. All right. Stuff we've all seen before. Let's do one more thing before we move on. Let's have it create a record. So let's come over here and get it to create another row for us. It's going to do its thing, and it's created that row. Let's pop into model-driven app, and lo and behold, it's done exactly that. Awesome sauce. All right, so that's the normal MCP Dataverse experience that we'd expect for someone who is a system administrator, somebody like me who has all the privileges. So I have all the tools here in my MCP server. I can pretty much do all the things, right? List, describe, read, create, update, all the things I've got access to on all of the tables. However, most users in our Dataverse system, so whether it's Dynamics 365, whether it is a custom model-driven app, something like that, most users are not going to have that level of permission. At least they shouldn't. We should really be setting up targeted security roles, giving people the least amount of access to the things that they need to make sure that we protect our data and our processes and our organization. So I'm going to come over here to another user that I've got, and this is a user that has far less privileges. Now again, same agent, use Dataverse MCP server to do whatever the user asks, but let's go ahead and ask it the same question. Now, my user, come over here to, where do I mean to go? Over here to the PPAC, and one part of the demo I didn't prepare for that I realized I needed. Let's come over here to our users. And so these are the roles that this user has. Test role, basic user. Now the sysadmin dupe, this role is a custom one that I created to do some testing last week and learned the hard way Never unassign sysadmin from yourself because you're going to create some problems. But this role does not have access to the Nathan test table that we're going to use. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so let's ask it to count the rows. So we should see. So we're expecting three rows, but just pop back to the PPAC real quick. This this test role does not have access to any of the Nathan test table. All right, let's go. So let me go ahead and hit return, and MCP server is going to go and do its thing. And look at that. I don't have permission. And so even though MCP server doesn't specifically have a security component today, it does use the inbuilt security in Copilot Studio, which is using the Graph API to say, who are you and what are you allowed to do? Let's try it with create record. We'll see the same thing. It's going to go do its thing. And it's going to say you don't have privileges to create those records. And so even though even though my MCP server again doesn't have a specific security component, it is respecting what me, the logged in user, is allowed to do in Dataverse as governed by my security roles. All right, let's go back to the PPAC and let's update this. So let's say that you can read, and let's do this at the user level, and we'll pick append and append to. Let's go ahead and save. All right. So we've updated that. Let's come back to our agent, and we'll just do a quick refresh, give the update a second to kick in. And let's try this again. Let's use read query to count the rows in Nathan test table. All right, look at that. This is interesting. It has 0 rows. Now, when we come into our model-driven app, we actually can't even see the table because we don't have permissions to it. At least we didn't. But let's come back over here to this one. You can see that we've got 3 rows, but those rows are owned by a different user. They're owned by me. And my permission levels back here in the PPAC are at the user level. So I can see rows that I own that I've created. So let's go ahead and let's reassign one of these. Let's reassign this to this other user. So we'll assign it. All right. Now that we've changed the owner, let's come back here and let's ask the same question again. And it sees 1 row. Again, it's governed by that user permission level of what I'm allowed to see in Dataverse. And again, if I come back to the PPAC and we update this row, update this again, let's say we upgrade this to the organization level and go ahead and save. Whoops. We should now see all 3 rows. Now, it might take a second or two for the for that to come through. Go ahead and do a quick refresh and we'll try it once more. Here we go. There we go. And so we can see 3 rows because we've upgraded that user's security level of permissions. And so now I can see rows in that table that are owned by the entire organization. But if I ask it to create a row, it should still say, you don't have permission to do that. And it has. It said, hey, you can't do that. All right. So you should hopefully be getting the idea that we've got this security that's inbuilt to Dataverse MCP in Copilot Studio based on who that logged in user is. All right, let's throw it a bit of a curveball. Let's come over here to our tools and let's configure this. And let's change this from end user credentials. So this is what this MCP server that I've set up is using. It's using the end user credentials. Let's change it to maker provided credentials. All right, we've done that. Let's do a quick publish. And this should now respect the credentials of the user who created this. That would be me as a system administrator. So give it a second to publish. All right, now let's go and see if we can create a row. Interesting. Okay, didn't like that. Let's try it one more time. Now, what I would have expected to see would be for Dataverse MCP to kick in and try that. Let's try it one more time. There we go. Okay. MCP is kicking in. It's going to try to create a row, and it still didn't like that. All right. I'm not sure quite what happened there. Let's come over to the other one and let's try it. Let's try it here and see if we're getting the same thing. Okay, so it worked in that one. Yep, so it's created it. So I'm not sure why the logged in user is getting this escalate. I would have expected it to say, hey, you don't have permission to do that. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Never worked with children, animals, or autonomous agents. Yeah, let's go ahead and let's try and reassign. Let's update our privilege again. So let's downgrade this to user. All right, so I should only be able to see the one row that I own in this this logged in user. So let's give that a try. But we're using the maker's credentials. So in theory, the maker, which is me as a system administrator, has higher permissions. So let's see what happens. All right, so MCP server is going to do its thing. It's trying to count the tables, and it contains one row. All right, this is really interesting. So even though my MCP connection is using maker-provided credentials, which should be the higher level permissions that me as a system administrator who created this agent has, it is still respecting the security privileges of the logged in user, and it's only showing me data that I have access to. So that's really, really interesting. So I hope this helps to start shedding light a bit on how security works in Copilot Studio, specifically when it comes to Dataverse MCP and how while it might feel like the Wild West at times, we can still limit access to data by using security roles out of the box the way we've been doing forever in Dynamics, Dataverse, and the Power Platform. Cool. Well, that brings me to the end of the demo. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, go do something awesome on the Power Platform today, and I will talk to you all soon.